Two little mice fell into a bucket of cream. The first mouse quickly gave up and drowned, but the second mouse, he struggled so hard that he eventually churned that cream into butter. And he walked out. Amen.
Welcome to Successful Dropout. This podcast is for the outliers, the innovators, the rebels, those that dare to dream and act on their dreams. I'm your host, Kylan Ginger. Join me as we find out what it takes to drop out, grind, and succeed. What's up, fam squad? I've got some pretty exciting news. If you listen to the podcast much, you know we've been building a pretty vibrant community of truly extraordinary people who have committed to an unconventional route through life. The Successful Dropout audience has been growing a lot, and I get a lot of people reaching out to me now with all sorts of questions regarding education, dropping out, opting out, entrepreneurship, resources, networking, etc. So much so that I decided it was time to create a more accessible community on Facebook so that we can all ask and answer these kinds of questions together, as well as celebrate our successes and encourage each other during inevitable adversity. So I've created a closed Facebook group, and I want to invite you to join it. If you follow Successful Dropout, if you resonate with our philosophy and want to help me grow this thriving community, go to successfulDropout.com/group. This community is for the rebels, the outliers, the innovators, the doers, and those who dare to dream and act on their dreams. If you're a dropout, an opt-out, if you're thinking about doing one of those things, if you're a parent, even if you aren't any of those things and you graduated school, I want to invite you to join. All that matters is that you resonate with the Successful Dropout philosophy and that you enter the group with the intention to provide value to the other members and not just receive value yourself. Again, go to successfuldropout.com/group to request admission. Once you're a part of the group, introduce yourself and get involved, and I'll see you there. What is up, Successful Dropouts? Get stoked because today on the show we have Sachet Gagwani. Sachet is an
lit.
What?
We lit. We in the house.
We lit. I thought you were like, wait, what? Like I mispronounced your name or something.
No, you good, bro. We
All
took
right,
care of that already.
I got quite the intro for you, man. We might have to mess with it later, or maybe we'll just keep it. We'll see here. But here's what I got. Sachet is an Indian-American entrepreneur specializing in mobile technology and marketing with extensive knowledge in developing consumer products in the iOS and Android platforms. He's also been able to make several of them go viral, both independently and through his companies. Currently, Sachet is focused on an anonymous geolocation-based social media app he launched with his partners, Covertly. He's also running his independent affiliate marketing business that he uses to fund his lifestyle. As a side hustle, Sachet trades his own capital on cryptocurrency markets, aka bitcoins and altcoins, and consults with his friends to do the same. Covertly has gotten over 150,000 downloads on the App Store, the Apple App Store that is, and has raised $150,000 from investors at a $500,000 valuation. Sachet plans to double or even triple that valuation within the next 2 fiscal quarters. So that was a mouthful. A lot of techie stuff in there, man. But tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do.
You know, man, I honestly don't know what I'm doing. I just kind of take it day by day. Because honestly, like, you know, I don't believe anybody that says they know exactly what they're doing. There's no way for anybody. I mean, maybe for a small business it makes sense, but like, if you're trying to build something that's like a global brand, then there's no way to expect all the variables, right? And you kind of have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable in that situation. So, that's the reason I say that.
Yeah, I think you're dead on there, man. It's so funny. And I just saw somebody, I think it was Jake Dennison who posted this on Facebook today. It was like, something to the extent of like, the older I get, just the more I realize that nobody has their crap figured out. You know, everybody, that's like part of what it means to be an adult, just realizing that nobody has it all figured out. And when you're younger, you kind of think that, but man, the older you get, like I would consider myself an adult now. Like I'm about to turn 28 and I've had a lot of life experience, and it's like, I don't feel like an adult. I'm still trying to figure things out. And now other people that I used to look up to that have already been adults, you know, like they don't have it figured out either. And so
Right. No doubt, man. And you know, that's why it becomes a little bit easier to choose people who you can trust, you know. Maybe they have a sense of humor, but at the same time they have humility and that aspect of not pretending like they know everything. And that's why I think I've been able to get, you know, such great partners along the way.
Yeah. Now, I was debating on when in the interview to go into this, but I think now is as good a time as any, man, because in the pre-interview chat here, we were just talking about the first day that we really started communicating. You sent me a very intriguing email. In fact, I was so intrigued, I went ahead and I posted it on my Facebook for all to see, and I blocked out your name.
Yeah.
And this was my post in lieu of posting that picture. I said, LOL, please excuse the language. Got this email from someone who was introduced to me as a potential guest for the show. Still vetting them out, but I thought this email was hilarious and intriguing. Definitely caught my interest, that's for sure. I must admit I've sent similar out-of-the-ordinary emails, albeit without four-letter words, to some people in order to grab their attention. # whatever it takes, ? And I posted your email, and it kind of unleashed a nice volley of both positive and negative responses.
It was actually a 7-letter word. You know, it ended with ing. So, you know, in the dictionary, that's like being in the process of, right? Instead of the traditional sense. And the reason I was, you know, set on that because I was in the process of conducting that verb while I was writing that email, right? So I figured, you know, that's why I'm going to put it in as inspiration.
Wait, what?
Dude, that's how I come up with the best emails. You know, you should definitely, I know it's a weird question to ask like your wife or something, but, you know, that like, just give it a shot sometime. You know, I know you're open-minded. You know, just ask her, can you do this for me while I type my next email? And just see what the results are. And you know, feel free to tell me what the results are.
Well, if that isn't a recipe for interesting emails, I don't know what else is. People listening might be a little confused as to what exactly we're talking about. I think I just for the sake of not getting flagged on iTunes or something like that, I won't actually quote the email word for word here, but I'll put it in I'll put a link or a picture of it in the show notes. So if you're listening right now, go to successfuldropout.com and go check out the show notes, and you'll see, and you could even go find my post on the post of this on my Facebook. But long story short, it was a gripping email, I'll say. It caught my interest, and so not only did I post it for everybody to see on social media, I emailed him back, and now of course he's on the show. But quickly found out that he was actually a very, very professional. Well, and you did say you were a professional guy. You signed off professionally.
Yeah, I said professionally. No, just to make sure that you knew.
Yeah. And honestly, man, I think that's what saved it. Like when I saw that at the end, I was like, oh, irony. I like this guy. So, oh man. But I mean, this led me to actually, I made a whole post, a blog post about it on the website because, and you're welcome to go read it. I'll put a link to that in the show notes too, because,
can't wait to read that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say 95% like positive responses, 5% like negative responses, mostly from like definitely the older generation and parents, which I totally understand. But I think I make a pretty good argument for why, I posted it, and why, maybe people listening don't want to take this exact route, but why I think just thinking unconventionally and unconventional and untraditional approaches sometimes really do work. So, Sachet, I'm curious, have you kind of used that tactic or similar tactics in any other area of business? I've been talking a lot here, but let's go back to you here.
Yeah, of course, man. No problem at all. I mean, it's really, I didn't think of it as a tactic. It was just, I was being myself, because before this whole entrepreneurship thing and these goals that I had in business, with a lot of the stuff I'm working on, we all started out as kind of, hackers in our basements, and I was surrounded, not literally, but obviously, on the internet, on IRC chats and things like that. IRC is like Internet Relay Chat. It's like a messaging system for, hackers to test their stuff on, without harming anybody directly, just on like emulated firewalls and things like that. And, they all have to break in to be able to get on these chats and talk to each other. It's kind of like a online ego type of thing. And these are all extremely smart people, right? Like, so many people that are way, way smarter than me on there that I kind of learned from just knowing their username, and probably never going to meet any of these people in real life. And, they kind of all talk like this. If you go on Reddit, it's the same thing. If you go on 4chan, it's even more of the same thing. But these are all extremely smart people. I just think, breaking that stereotype is great, because, one of my major influences, John McAfee, the founder of McAfee Antivirus and currently running MGT Capital Investments. Most people don't know this, but he ran for president, right? In the last election, and he was running through a third party that I'm registered in, the Libertarian Party of the United States, and he was actually competing for the nomination against Gary Johnson. You're probably more familiar with him, and I was actually managing one of his campaigns right online, like running all the pages and stuff, and I was fortunate enough to speak to him on Skype. And if you look up, what it comes down to is this guy's like 70 plus years old, right? And you look up any of his interviews, and it's just straight raw, right? Like how he's feeling. No words are held back. Like, this guy was accused of murder in Belize. He says he didn't commit it. He was a white guy in a third world country, and there were just a lot of corruption against him, and I kind of believe that. In a country that poor, you just see this guy worth $100 million, building a house and talking to all these people like he owns them. That's how they might feel, just because of that. And this guy just does, so talking to him, he was one of my major influencers for the whole thing. But, there are a lot of people out there who are just all talk kind of, and they aren't really innovating at all, that talk like that. But I think the main thing is balance. Like, you can't cut out, and this was like one of the major factors influencing the development of one of my most successful products, Covertly, right? So I can't really just censor that out all the time, just because a couple people are offended, when that's the reason one of my main businesses exists in the first place.
Yeah, and actually, I think you bring up a really good point, and this is something I've talked about a couple times. Is there's a lot of people online that are out there, and they put on this persona, this brand. It's their personal brand, this online brand, and they're one person in one way and look a certain way. as this brand, and then that's different from who they actually are. And it's just always really confused
Exactly.
me, because every human being, every personality is unique to start with. And so it's like people are all obsessed, like, oh, how do I develop my personal brand? Well, the best place to start is just to be yourself, because you're already different from everybody else. You have that competitive, that innate competitive advantage. And so that's something, that's something I definitely admire about what you've done. And so it's very obvious that this kind of part of you, this sort of, what would you call it? Like a maybe a rebellious kind of gritty, or have you put a word to it yet?
It's weird because I could see from like an outside perspective how that could be the assumption, but really this is the way to be natural, right? Everybody else is not, or not everybody else, but most people aren't being natural. Like, I get comments from quote unquote, like, this is what these people do for a living, right? They call themselves social media influencers and personal branding experts,
Yeah.
right? And I'm not hating on the industry or anything, but just the fact that so many, like, dozens and dozens of these people who have apparently such a huge following take their time to message me and criticize me being myself, right? That makes no sense to me, because I don't know if it's just subconsciously, like, getting at them that they've built this fake persona up so much that they can't be themselves anymore. And it's like a form of jealousy, maybe, that, I don't have to worry about any repercussions because I just had it raw from the start. And I think that's how it should be. Like, why, like, what value would I gain off of, not being direct with you and telling you how I feel? Like, in the long term, that's just going to crash and blow up on both of us, right? So I'd rather be like, hey, this is who I am. You can accept me or you can't. And what's that done? It's brought people, like-minded people and mentors that have, contributed so much value to my life. So really not even like a self-promotional thing, like just in general lifestyle, I'd recommend everybody to try it for like at least a week, right? And I guarantee you'll have a huge weight lifted off your shoulders. Just be yourself, be like how you feel, and then just see what negative effects it has on it. It's the fear that drives most people to hide that. Everybody's like that, but no one wants to admit it.
Eccentric. That's the word I was thinking of. You obviously have a very eccentric side to your personality, and you've discovered, you figured out when to kind of let that loose, and when to maybe be a little more tactical with it. Because, like, if you were to, like, I even told you before you came on the show, like, we try not to do too much cussing on the show, like, at least to minimal. Some is fine, but and I don't know if you do cuss a lot. If I just read your email, I would say, yeah, you probably cuss a lot. but it's like, but that's that's who you are, and you let who you were kind of shine through in the email and in kind of our initial communication. But obviously you're tactical about it. You realize, okay, this isn't the best situation to be totally eccentric, and you kind of see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about like some really common things right now, right? Like, I mean, maybe not for most of your audience, but you're asking me questions of how I feel on a daily basis. So to me, it's just like natural. So I can respond to those questions, in a very orthodox way, right? And but if I'm feeling like, actually excited about something, like I was actually excited about your name. I thought it was a cool name. So, so that's how I expressed it, exactly how I felt about it. Right. But right now there's nothing like super crazy going on, right? So there's no reason for me to fake that emotion, but trust me, if you get me excited, you'll be able to see that again multiple times.
Gotcha. So let's move on here. I was originally, what I was saying is I like how what we've just been talking about has sort of, and you already said this, sort of shaped the way and been a lot of the reason why Covertly has done very well recently. So maybe for our listeners, explain what the Covertly app is exactly, what you guys are doing currently, and talk about your competitor a bit too, because I think that'll give people more of an idea of what you're doing and why you're differentiated here.
Sure. So pretty much, I think this is a really good transition and placement in this interview, because what we were just talking about, this app we built is just a transition of that philosophy into technology. And what I mean by that is, for your audience, for the whole audience listening, just take a minute and think about, being on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, right? Like, let's just take, for example, this isn't the exclusive situation, but like, for example, the elections, right? The presidential elections, regardless of your political stance on that personally, both sides went on Facebook and they saw, their friends and families and their closest peers getting into very sustained and growing and quickly escalating arguments where you'd see two family members not talking to each other for days because of, support for a specific candidate who they've never ever met in their life.
Totally.
Right. And I was like, wow, this is insane, and Covertly was founded way before the elections, right? There have been multiple smaller situations. Like, people have been getting offended since, humanity's existed. So this is just a particular scenario. But if you go online and look at all that stuff, it's pretty crazy. But playing devil's advocate, you can't really criticize these people for doing that, because that's literally what the internet was meant for and is meant for. So they have the right to post that. So the questions we should have been asking is, how can we, continue civil debates? How can we, at the same time, stop these relationships from breaking apart, right? So, Kyle, you should still be able to get offended and not get mad at me, right? That's what we're doing right now. So Covertly is an anonymous social network based on geolocation. If you go on like Twitter, for the first time, you're going to have to sign up and log in, etc. Right? When you download Covertly from the App Store, you enter that timeline, that news feed automatically. There's no sign-ups, there's no handles, no usernames, nothing, right? Mm-hmm. So people are wondering, like, how do we do that? What is the data point for identifying a user, at least on our end? And we take no information except your geolocation, what point your phone is in, and the UDID, which is like the software serial number of your iPhone on iOS. So those are the only two components we take from you, instead of your relationship status, your full name, your birth date, your address, all that other crap that we don't need. And then we create a feed of content based on what city you're posting from. And this way, no one knows who you are. You can express your feelings, and you can get feedback in the comments. So it's like posting a Facebook status. No one knows who you are. You don't have to face those social repercussions of, getting in those arguments. So let's say now you thought about, what arguments you've seen in the past on the internet. Now imagine if those arguments were ported onto this platform, word for word, right? At least starting out, like with the initial post. The comments would have ended up completely different, right? No one would have held a grudge in that situation, and everybody would have been able to say what they want at the same time. So you get this feed of unlimited anonymous content. You can vote up or down. Well, so you can like it or dislike it. And so let's say a post gets like 5 upvotes and 2 downvotes. It's going to equal out to 3 upvotes. If you get to -5, so 5 downvotes total, then your post automatically gets deleted from the feed. So this is the true direct democracy of the internet, right? And that's what we're trying to create. And so that's kind of what the app's for. And then, you've got 2 feeds. You've got the recent feed and the hot feed. So on the hot feed, the highest, the post with the highest, hundreds of votes goes to the top of that feed in that chronological order. And then the recent feed is obviously what posts are, posted right now and which ones are old, in that order. So the other thing is radius, right? So you had mentioned Yik Yak, used to be one of my favorite apps to use. So no hate there at all, but they did a couple things that I didn't agree with. They had radius set to 2 miles, so you couldn't change how big of a radius you were pulling content from. You could only pull content from within 2 miles of where you were, and you would pull all the content from that radius. So that was kind of limiting because people in rural areas, I understand, the populations aren't dense there in those specific points, but if you take the total surface area of the rural locations, it outweighs that. So all they did was, consider the sample size of population density rather than surface area density. And what I mean by that is if you go to, middle of nowhere and let's say like Kentucky or something, and there's someone in DC, like the only thing the guy in Kentucky is going to see is his own posts. The guy in DC is going to, every second he's going to see like 300 more posts come in. So it's absolutely insane. So we created a system where the guy in Kentucky can see the posts from New York and DC and San Francisco, right, and LA. So that's what a major fix we had, and I think that's why we saw a lot more initial engagement, and that engagement ended up creating more downloads and higher rankings. Just starting off, because I mean, I'm very proud of the fact we raised a little bit of money and we've been able to fund our growth, but this is just the beginning, right? The very, very beginning. And we've been able to accomplish a lot more in this last year, than our previous competitors have been able to in like 2 or 3 years of their launch. So, and then the other thing is, revenue models. So these previous apps raised a bunch of money. They had no way of getting a return for their investors. Their only plan was getting really big and selling out. And that's super, super risky, especially for $75 million at a $400 million valuation. That makes no sense. You need to have a plan B and preferably a plan C. So with Covertly, we started out, before we had raised a penny, the app was making money, right? Because we had ads in place. We're selling data, right? You're probably thinking, wow, how are you selling data when you're anonymous? So like if for those of you who don't know, like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all these bigger companies, they sell all your personal data, right? Most people don't know because they don't read the terms of service, but they have continuously gotten bad press for that and been criticized for that by many people. And with ours, the only data we get is, like I said, your UDID and the location of where your phone's at. We don't know who owns the phone. We don't have any information from anybody who who uses the app.
Right.
Those are literally the only two things we have. So how do we produce value with that? Well, there are bigger companies like Uber, Lyft, Turo, Airbnb, many companies that have a lot of geolocation aspects, and they want to know how many people are in what place at what time during what day. They don't care who the people are. They don't care about if they're in a relationship, what their email is, etc. Right? They just want how many people are in this place at this time during what month, during what year, and all those analytics. So we wholesale that data to a data company, and they retail it to the bigger guys. And then, I don't know if they work directly with these, like some of these companies I name, like Uber or whatever, but I could see them working with them but like Uber would know after buying this data to where they should hire more drivers, where their passengers are migrating to over time in terms of permanent residents, where they should focus their capital on in terms of expanding. And Facebook and Instagram and Twitter analytics, they can't really provide just that data separately like we do. So that's kind of, the business model we're based on. So we're already bringing in revenue based on that. And I think that's why a lot of these angel investors wanted to come in, because they saw that, oh, wow, they rebuilt something that was already viral. It's on its way to going viral. And then they are also making money off of it long before they've even raised their first round.
Right.
So they did everything right that was already done right, and they fixed all the things done wrong thus far.
Right. Yeah, and when you talk about what has been previously done and everything, for people listening, which might actually give you a bit more of a feel for what this app is all about, is Yik Yak was their previous competitor, and they just recently they closed up shop, but
like 2 months ago, I think,
yeah,
something like that.
But man, I mean, one of the things that you and I were talking about is just the way that they were so viral and had such a big kind of user base, but because of the nature of the app, because people could just kind of say things anonymously, there's a lot of stuff being said, and a lot of people getting offended, and so they were getting, I'm sure threatened with, you said, bomb threats, and probably, I'm sure, lawsuits and all this stuff. So they kind of lost the original vision, is what you were saying, of anonymity with this app, and started, I don't know if they were giving people usernames, but things like that. But seems like they didn't really hold true to that, which is what you're trying to do this time.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally understandable, right? Like, you want an environment with free speech, and I'm all for going against, traditional regulations, but where I draw the line is when it harms someone else, right? Like, actually is able to physically harm somebody else. And when you get to that situation, you want to stay calm. Like, you don't want to change your entire vision because of one guy doing what he's not supposed to be doing on your app. So what you want to do is figure out a filtration system based on a non-aggression principle and kind of adapt that in maybe AI, artificial intelligence, or keyword blocks, things like that, instead of changing the entire experience for every single user on your platform, right? That's just pretty much digital suicide right there. So that's kind of what we figured out how to do. We're still working on it. We still have a long way to go, but as of what you can do on the app right now, everything's working perfectly. So, for example, we used to have video stories like Snapchat and Instagram, and it was completely anonymous. But, I went on there one day, there are like thousands of stories with, 25, 30,000 views each, because it'll show you a view counter of how many people viewed the story. And it won't be like Snapchat, right? Like it'll be like 5 figures in views, without anybody following anybody. It will just be like, who's actually seen this? So, there's just a bunch of dudes like jerking off, right? Like videos of, and I was like, what the hell? This is not, what this is meant for. So, obviously we've taken that off temporarily, after Apple banned us for the first time. So we got a warning from Apple, and we got banned. We removed it. We put it back in with just text and pictures. We added the AI we were testing out to the pictures, so you can't, post any nudity and things like of that nature right now. And we're trying to adapt that into video by importing all the penis-based content on the internet and allowing that to, block off. It's like, I don't know if you've ever seen that show, Silicon Valley. It's kind of like the hot dog, not hot dog app.
I haven't, no. I need to watch that.
Yeah, it's a really fun, but it's exactly like that. That's what we're building and integrating into our platform in all seriousness. So,
oh, that's great.
So, I mean, am I allowed to say penis?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
that's
cool.
fine. Thanks, internet. Of course, that would happen when you put an anonymous app up there with anonymous video. It's like, oh gosh.
Yeah. So, and then the other thing we had, right, like when we were at our early stages, like really early stages, we had, so we were making money through ads. We were pretty happy. We were like, we need to give back to our consumers, right? And so what we did was we had the system. So, going back to the upvotes. So let's say you post 10, and this never happens, but just to make numbers easier, let's just say you post 10 pieces of content that get 100 upvotes each, right? So now your karma is at 1,000, 10 times 100. So once you hit 1,000 karma, you're able to, there would be a form that popped up, right, where you could put your address in, if you wanted to, and we would mail you a Chipotle gift card.
So in other words, if you make enough good posts and get enough upvotes, you get a free burrito.
Yeah, so we were repaying the engagement that was monetized with burritos, right?
Love it.
And so we were buying so many Chipotle gift cards. It was crazy. And then next thing you know, the lawyers from Chipotle, they contact us, for the cease and desist letter.
Oh, gosh.
So we have to remove that whole thing, right? And then I don't know if you read about it yet, but around where I live, there's this town called Sterling, Virginia. So just yesterday or the day before, something like that, I think it was yesterday, the Chipotle in Sterling, Virginia, was shut down because there were a lot of people getting sick. I was like, what, And then suddenly I see all these suspicious posts on Covertly, like, 2 for 1 free burritos. I'm like, what the hell? And then, I'm looking at the location and it is the Chipotle that Chipotle and other Chipotle locations around that area. I'm like, what? like they're trying to advertise on our platform for free after, sending us a cease and desist letter, based on something that, made them a lot of money. So like, I'm just trying to figure out whoever runs that company needs to be fired.
I think it's so interesting that you've just kind of created this really like volatile community. It's like you could just build something and throw it out there and see how everybody reacts. And so I think it's such an adventure.
I've kind of been a slacker all my life, and the one thing I really put effort into is learning how to build software and mobile products. And the reason I did that was not because I'm a very hard worker, but because I'm super, super lazy. So just by learning how to do that one thing, even though it's super complicated, I can get an idea. I can just pull it out of my ass and publish it, right? Like, I don't have to go to, like yourself. I don't have to build this building and then, hire a bunch of yoga teachers and do all that stuff and manage it. I just put it out there, figure out some sort of gray hat way to get traffic to it. And next thing you're on an interview on Successful Dropout.
Oh man, I love it, man. Well, that's really cool. I'll put a link to the Covertly app too. People can go check it out. I'm on there. I've made a couple posts myself. Some of those posts are, if you're a big follower of the show, you could probably recognize which one is me just based on the content I'm posting. But no, it's real cool. I log on there, and I live in Central Washington here, so it's got my little dot in the state, and then I can zoom in or out, kind of pick my radius, and based on say I'm 500-mile radius on me, I can only see those posts from people around me, and the app is definitely still growing, but there's a surprising amount of engagement on there already, and so I'm interested to see how that continues to go, man, and maybe we'll have you back on the show here in another 6 months for some more interesting stories, because it seems like with an app and a community like that, with just a concept like that, everything's anonymous. Like, people's inhibitions, there just are none. They just do.
Well, I know this is going to go one of two ways. We're either going to end up in court, right, or we're going to raise $2 million. Yeah. Like, I just know right now that's how it's going to go.
Oh, it's so true. Either way, we can have you back on the show, even if it's from a jail cell or something.
Awesome. Thank you. You'll be my first call.
Oh, that's great. Let's see. I kind of want to talk about cryptocurrency just a bit. Just a bit. We don't have to go too in depth, but just because I haven't talked about cryptocurrency at all on the show yet, and you're actually somebody who knows about it. And so for people listening, if you don't know what cryptocurrency is, I don't either. This guy does, and I would recommend some basic Googling for like 3 hours or half a day just to start to get a little bit of a grasp of what it is. I've done it enough to where I feel comfortable. I've invested some of my money on various platforms into different cryptocurrencies.
Have you made good returns, if you don't mind me asking? Have you made some satisfactory returns, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah. I mean, so far, I got in when Ethereum, was up to 400 or something. It went down to, it was like 180 or something, and I bought it.
I got in on Ether at $8. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, so you're ridiculous because you've got that techie mind and all the techie friends, so you're up to date on this stuff. So I bought in at like 180 or something. Now it's back up to 2 something, and I'm assuming it'll probably go back up to 400 or so. But the one thing I have learned is that nobody really knows exactly what's going on. Everybody just kind of has an opinion based on somebody else's opinion, based on somebody else's opinion. All that we really have are like the experts, like probably you, who actually understand the technology and can kind of make educated guesses on where it's going to go. Other than that, nobody really seems to know where it's going to go. And so my strategy has just been, I throw money at it that I can afford to lose when it goes down, or when a new currency is, say,
It's kind of like the stock market, but you could actually make money.
right. Yeah, well, or lose a bunch too.
Yeah,
because it's so volatile right now. And even like the traditional stock market and traditional like professionals in that arena they're having a hard time making heads or tails of it, because it's unlike anything we've seen. But maybe, I mean, just briefly talk about your experience with cryptocurrency and how you kind of got started, and maybe what you've bought into. I mean, Ethereum at $7-8, that's insane.
Yeah, so man, on this show, you concentrate really hard on exploring the sides of success without formal education. Yes. And I know that someone had said that I don't know if you agree with this or not, but college is the single biggest scam. And I actually have to disagree with that. I'd have to say that it's the second biggest scam, right? So I think the first one's the Federal Reserve, right? So the Federal Reserve prints like $50 billion in cash on a daily basis. It doesn't matter if you have the same amount of money saved tomorrow. It's going to be worth less and less and less the next day, right? So unless you're making a lot, and I mean a lot, like top 0.0001%, you're not safe from that.
Right.
So this guy in Japan, he was kind of one of those basement hackers I was telling you about earlier. He goes by the name of Satoshi Nakamoto. That's his code name. No one knows if he's actually like of Japanese ethnicity or not. But that's just the Japanese code name. So this guy said, I'm tired of the central banking system in Japan, creating this inflation rate and controlling all the money supply, and and it's financial slavery. So I'm going to invent a currency that prints itself digitally. So basically, if you think about what I like thinking about is like people know how gold works, right? Like physically. So you take gold and you teleport that into a digital system pretty much. So there's a bunch of blocks, right? So the system it's based on is called the blockchain. So think of a chain of blocks, literally, just for visual, just to understand it visually. And when you go and get gold, like when people go and mine gold from the ground, they don't know where it is. They just take educated guesses based on that. So just in the same way, these blocks store this currency called Bitcoin. So they're buried underground on the internet, pretty much. It's a good metaphor for it. And then basically how it started was Satoshi got all these volunteers to mine these blocks after he put them underground on the internet. So so how you do that is you can't do it yourself. You have to have a specialized computer that contributes power to the system called the blockchain. By power, I don't mean electricity, I mean processing power, like CPU, GPU power. And let's say there's, just to make math easier, let's say there's a block full of 25 Bitcoins. And then there's 5 mining computers mining at the same block, contributing CPU power to the same block, and they're all contributing it equally. When that block is decoded and it's broken, each computer gets rewarded with 5 Bitcoins, right? So what this does is what all of these this currency has a set market cap. So every time there's a block mined, the value of Bitcoin goes up, and that's why we've seen that, because it's like gold. Like,
There's only so much of
if
it.
we mined, if we mined all the gold in the earth and somehow made sure that we actually did it, then we confirmed that, then the price of gold would just skyrocket, just because now you can't get it unless you buy it, right? And then every transaction after that, every peer-to-peer transaction after that, when you bought gold, it would go even higher because there's a lot of demand for it. So that's what we're seeing with Bitcoin, except we know, because of these computers working on this, we know what the mining difficulty is, right? We know everything about it, all the analytics. It's all open source, and the code can be viewed and downloaded. So we can see that. So that's the thing about. So I like comparing Bitcoin to gold, right? And then altcoins are pretty much stock market style replication. So in the traditional world, you've got your gold, you've got your stock market. In the digital world, you've got your Bitcoins and you've got your altcoins. So once you sell gold, for example, you can invest that money into the stock market and, perhaps make some more. It's kind of the same way. So each stock is specialized in a company that produces a specific good or service. And they release these things called IPOs, initial public offerings, which means any normal person can buy a stock off of that market. So in the crypto world, there's this thing called ICO, initial coin offering. So there's multiple coins that you can trade your Bitcoin for, like Ethereum, Potcoin, Ripple, things like that. And then each of those currencies does something different. So, for example, Ethereum, codename ETH, it's a currency that can be transferred between real life and gaming. So if you're playing a video game, there's probably some sort of currency in there already, right? Like if you're on PlayStation or Xbox and you're playing like Need for Speed, you have the fake dollars in the game that you can buy like new cars for and modify them for and stuff. So imagine if you could take that money out of the game, right? Convert that to real value and real world money, and then spend that. That's essentially what Ethereum is, and that's it's a really good platform. So developers can put this currency into their apps, and it's actually worth something when you convert it to Bitcoin. So you can't convert Ethereum directly to dollars. You have to trade that Ethereum for Bitcoin and then sell the Bitcoin for dollars. And it sounds complicated, but there are so many exchanges that'll just do it for you immediately. It's very intimidating at first, but once you start researching it, anyone can do it. Now the problem is, the only thing I see is these ICOs are mostly pump and dump. So most of the investors, they're looking to make a quick buck. Typically, they're not looking into what each and every ICO is actually offering in terms of value to the real world. So they're just putting in money as soon as something comes out because they have, good marketing, good landing pages. And then, they either make a bunch of money, sell it. So that's like the kind of penny stocks of the crypto world, I'd say. There's a lot of different strategies. I'm not really worried because I know the main things are really going to take off. So, the SEC, IRS, FTC, like all these agencies can't even understand this stuff yet, right? Like fully on a line by line code level. So they're just trying to figure out how to regulate it, and they can't. So if you can't beat them, join them, right? So you can compete with them. So now there's a cryptocurrency called Ripple. Now Ripple is non-traditional in the crypto world because Ripple is actually centralized. So what that means is it's controlled by one company, right? So it's called Ripple Labs. That's the name of the company. And they have, like 99 or 100 of the world's biggest banks signed up. And they're looking and they've converted money from those banks to the actual currency Ripple. So they're all shareholders in that. They're planning on holding, 60% of that equity stake in Ripple for a very, very long time, like decades, right? So the value will just go up. And then every time part of that 40% is purchased, the value goes up. So, the banks, government are teamed up together, invested in Ripple. And then, like I said, most of the investors in crypto aren't technically inclined. So they're thinking, oh, look, the government's going to regulate Bitcoin. I mean, anyone that's technically inclined on blockchain technology knows that that's not physically possible. But just reading it in headlines, because the government, from some perspective, does have control of the media, they can do that. So then Bitcoin will diminish and everybody will be like, oh, they're still supporting Ripple, right? And then that money will flow into Ripple. And then eventually everybody will figure out that blockchain can't be regulated and they'll put it all back in, right? So I think for short-term trading, and by short-term, I mean like 1, 2, 3 years, something like that. I see a huge potential in Ripple, and then, but in the long term, I think Bitcoin's, like John McAfee tweeted the other day. He said, if one Bitcoin is not worth $500,000 within our lifetime, then I will eat my dick off on live television. So that was pretty convincing to me.
Oh my gosh!
And knowing him, I think he'll actually do it.
Well, man. So I just got to say that's like the most comprehensive explanation I've heard of cryptocurrency and blockchain, everything so far. I feel like I even understand it just a lot more in just the last 5 minutes here. So thanks for that. We are like basically to the end of our time now, which is a bummer because I feel like we've only touched on a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. So I think we might just have to have you on again, maybe for a shorter Friday episode. But for people listening, what's the best way to connect with you?
I think my most engaging social media is on Instagram. So it's just Sachet the G. It's my first name, Sachet, the word the, THE, and then the letter G. So just at Sachet the G. Follow me on Instagram. You can also hit me up on Twitter. Same tag. Snapchat. Same username. Whatever you want, man. I love meeting new people.
Awesome. Well, Successful Dropouts, you've been hanging out with Sachet and Kylan, learning what it takes to drop out, grind, and succeed as an entrepreneur. For everything we talked about today, head over to successfuldropout.com and type SACHET into the search bar, and the show notes will pop right up. And as always, stay hungry, stay foolish. For more information about how to drop out, grind, and succeed, go to successfuldropout.com. I also love questions. If you have a question about anything we talked about today, I want to hear from you. Go to successfuldropout.com and click the Ask Me a Question link at the top of the page. Successful Dropouts, if you could go to iTunes and leave a positive rating and review, it would help this show out a lot. I know you're busy. I know you got a lot going on. But if you do that, it helps this podcast rank. It helps other people listen to it and gain value just like you have been. Thank you so much in advance.